Brown County Commission meeting to order. Commissioner Sutton, would you lead the pledge, please? Lead the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
First item on our agenda, we have the opening chemical bids for weed and pest.
Morning, Chris.
Morning, Chris. Morning, Sarah.
Morning. Okay. Notice to chemical bidders. Sealed bids will be received in the chambers of the Brown County Commissioners, Courthouse Annex at Aberdeen, South Dakota until 8:45 a.m. on April 9th at said time, and place all bids will be publicly opened, read, and considered for furnishing of chemical for the Brown County Weed and Pest Department for 2019. Proposal guarantee: no deposit or bond will be required at time of bid opening. Contract: Brown County will give notice to the successful bidder that his proposal has been accepted, and said bidder shall within 10 days thereafter enter into contract with Brown County in accordance with the bid as accepted. Successful bidder shall furnish proper certificate of insurance as required by Brown County. Contracts for the chemical shall be firm and will be in effect for a period of 8 months from April 1st to November 30th, 2019. Sealed envelopes containing bids shall be addressed to Brown County Auditor, 25 Market Street, Suite 1, Aberdeen, South Dakota, and be marked chemical bid for Brown County Weed and Pest Board, and to be opened at 8:45 a.m. on April 9th, 2019. The Brown County Board of Commissioners reserves the right to accept or reject any or all bids, and to accept the bid they deem to be in the best interest of Brown County. Brown County is exempt from federal excise tax and state sales tax. The specifications are on file and may be obtained at no charge at the office of the Brown County Auditor in the Brown County Weed and Pest Office.
So first one is from Van Dees Chemicals. He's got here, I think what we generally do, or what we did last year, I just kind of put everything together. We open them up and then meet again, next week, and with the recommendations. That works. So there's the one from Van Dees. Looks like he put it in for everything, and then this one is for from Adapco. And I think they generally just handle the mosquito chemical, the larvicide and the insecticide. And I'm sure they've actually got one here. Got their insurance stuff. And figure out which sheet is the actual chemical. Oh, here we go. Okay, so they put in for the biomist and the biomist.
Just the biomist.
Just the biomist, it looks like.
How much is it?
Let's see, they put in a bid for $3,025 for a 55-gallon drum, or $137.50 for a 2.5-gallon jug, so $55 per gallon. And Van Dees gave us a price of, looks like $68.50 a gallon for a 55-gallon drum, or 72. Is that a 7? Yeah. 72 for a 2.5-gallon jug. So it looks like Adapco's got the same price, whether it's a 55-gallon drum or a 2.5-gallon jug.
And quite a bit cheaper.
Yeah. Yep.
Considerably.
Yeah, I think that's what we went with last year.
Yep.
So. But I guess what I can do is compare everything to the state bid, and then I'll just throw everything together on a sheet, see who's got the best one, and then we can meet next Tuesday if that works.
Make a motion to defer it to next week.
Second. Moved by Kipley, second by Biker, to defer the weed chemical bids till next week. Give Chris a chance to go through the numbers to work what benefits the county the best. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We're gearing up though. I saw someone mowing last night.
Oh, yeah? I saw my first sprig of wormwood on the side of the
Did
road
you?
in town here.
I saw the first stripey gopher yesterday, too.
Oh, really? Did you get it?
Wasn't prepared.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dick.
We're a little hard to tell the clock.
You're at 8:52.
Yeah, I just we're a little before the next item. Larry, you want to take care of a couple items?
Sure. General meeting minutes from April 2nd.
Move. Move by Sutton, second by Weiss to approve the county general meetings for April 2nd. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Claims.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Pikert, second by Sutton to approve claims. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
HR report.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Weiss, second by Kepley to approve the HR report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Well, fair contract.
Move 'em.
Second.
Moved by Kepley, second by Sutton to approve fair contracts. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The First United Methodist.
Move.
Second. Moved by Sutton, second by Biker to approve the lease for the youth campground. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The Indigent Defense Council contract.
Move it.
Second.
Wasn't there somebody that just came off that board?
Yeah, she went to work for the state's attorney's office.
Yeah, so have we appointed somebody, or is there somebody else been
We
appointed?
got, I think, everybody that wants to do it, and then we redo the contract each. Is it a year?
So the way the contract works is it needs to be unanimous by the Indigent Defense Council that's on the contract, a unanimous vote to accept somebody new in, and then the county also has to approve it. So if there's anybody that wants to take that open slot, or even in addition to that person, they could have 15 people if it was unanimous by all the Indigent Defense Council. So they'd have to do that.
Thank you.
Which they can do it anytime.
They can do it anytime.
Excuse me.
Yep.
But at this time, they're just gonna go with what they have and split that pot up between the bunch. That's what I understood?
That's what I understand. I haven't heard any different.
Okay.
Yep.
Motion by Kipling, second by Sutton to approve the Indian Defense Council contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Lottery permit.
Move. Second. Moved by Sutton, second by Packer to approve the lottery permit. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The appraisal agreement.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Packer, second by Kipley to approve the appraisal agreement. The amount was for $4,200.
Right.
All in favor? And that is for the- Aye. That is for the Mellon building.
Yes. Yep.
Is there a malt beverage permit floating around in here?
Um,
Pulled.
Yeah, that one was pulled because they did not have any insurance for it yet.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have to go.
That's all I have. Yep.
We still have 5 minutes before our next. Gary, do you have anything?
Just what I have on the end of the agenda, if you want to just go ahead
We
and
could
do
probably
that.
do it before dinner anyway.
I have no idea. I know.
Good morning.
Morning. 8:55, 9 o'clock. Derek out there?
Yeah, I saw you walk through.
Derek?
Yeah.
Right there.
We're a little early for you, but
We're a little early, Derek, but is this going to require an executive personnel or?
It will.
Okay.
Just briefly to cover 2 points and then we can come out of it.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to
Move
go
it.
into executive personnel.
Second.
Moved by Kipley, second by Sutton. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in exec for personnel.
No, it was, I didn't know if we needed to discuss anything outside of exec that we talked about in exec, so.
I don't have anything for you.
We're good?
Okay.
No.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Derek.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Next item on the agenda is discussing wildlife, Densley Snamble.
That's supposed to be me. All right, come on up and have a chair.
Who owns them?
Who owns?
Who owns this wildlife? Deer, pheasants? Who owns them?
Everybody does.
The
Everybody
public.
owns them.
The public.
So you mean the people?
Public.
The people own them. Okay? Now, between Day and Spink, Brown, I'm safe to say that there's been over 1,000 deer that starved to death. Shouldn't somebody be liable? I'm not crying about the money. I probably spent $1,200, $1,300 feeding deer. I'm not crying. I can't see them die. I tried to get the township. The township's got bukus of money to feed them. Our township over there's got a pipeline goes through and they got them wind towers. They've got money. Nobody wants to do anything. And if it's the first time when I started complaining, I called the sheriff up in Webster. And I said, the deer are starving. He said, call the game and fish. I said, when a cow or a horse dies, you call the sheriff. I'm not talking about deer, I'm talking about life. Does it make any difference if they're domesticated or wild?
By law, it does make a difference.
It what?
By law, it does make a difference. So the state law is going to say if an individual cow is owned by a private person, the sheriff, if that livestock is being neglected, the sheriff can do something about it. If it's wildlife, by law, the wildlife is owned by the state, so the county can't do anything about it. Otherwise, the county would be selling deer permits and making money off of it instead of the state.
Well, then okay, don't you think we should change this day and age? Should something have to starve to death? Should 1,000 deer out there starve to death?
Probably not, but that would
Okay,
be
then
something
let's
that the
make a law.
legislature would have to change,
It
yes.
would be a legislative issue, not a county issue.
Well, how do we get this thing to work?
Talk to your legislators.
Well,
Let them start something during the legislative session.
I've talked to them.
Who did you talk to?
I've been with Soon's office.
Well, you need to go
That's
on the state
federal.
level.
Uh-huh.
What, you'd be in district, I gotta think, would you be in district 2 or 3? 2. You'd be in district 2, so you'd talk to Brock Greenfield and or Lana Greenfield. Who's the other?
Caleb Weiss.
Caleb Weiss. Those would be the people, because they're the ones that go to the state of South Dakota.
Well, okay, when I
legislature.
talk to Soon's office, shouldn't they pass that on? Do I have to figure out who I gotta keep walking up to try to get attention?
Well, you need to start at the local level, and that would be your local legislators.
Well, so, okay, I'll go back. When I started with them, there was 3 legislation in Dade County.
When they decide to go.
I tried calling them up 4 times, and I called them up when they were busy once, and they were home. I know they were home. I can't hear them. So if I'm not right by the telephone, I was supposed to give them my number. I didn't give it because it wouldn't do me good. But I called them 4 times, 3 of them, and I never got hold of them. So what I'm trying to tell you, I don't care what we do, there's nothing working today. Everything, we're spiraling down. I was in Korea, and when I went to Korea, the Mama Sons was planting rice with their hands. They plowed the fields with oxen or the mud. I went to Seoul, there was nothing there but now Korea is booming. What did I see change over here? We're going downhill. They are prospering. You go to North Korea, there's absolutely nothing there. Did we change South Korea? Absolutely. The guys that went to Vietnam changed Vietnam. Do we change ourselves? No. Just like this book of matches. You want to light a match? You want to light a match for me?
Not really.
Well, I'm trying to get a point. When we were kids, we used to carry matches.
I'm not good when I play with matches.
Well, see where our problem is?
Okay, well, we understand that you're concerned about deer, and nobody likes to see them suffer, but quite frankly, the county commission
But
does not
I'm
have
trying to find out
responsibility.
to who to get so we do something.
The laws would have to be changed at the state
Well,
level,
I
so you
understand.
gotta talk to your local legislators.
I understand.
Or the governor, call the governor's office. I mean,
I did. They had to get me an appointment, and then I was working around with the television out here taking pictures of these starving deer. No. Nobody cares. This is the point I'm trying to get across. Nobody cares anymore.
Where did you see the starving ones? South of town? Because I live north of town, and I got a herd of about 200, and they're well fed on silage and bagged corn. We've adopted about 200 of them, and they're very well fed.
Okay.
So where are your starving ones at?
I live in southeast of Fernie.
Okay, so maybe there's nobody with cattle down there? Because I agree with you. I think they're all our deer, and we should all share in it. And I don't know where to send my bills when they go through the fences and break stuff and the feed that they're taking, and I'm totally with you, but I don't see, unless individuals, like, that's nice that you're feeding them, but I think that's baiting, and I don't know, you know, are you baiting them? Are you doing it just to feed?
No, I couldn't shoot.
You don't shoot them, okay.
I haven't shot a deer, but the biggest percentage of deer I shot, I poached. Well, that's what they were made for, to put on the table. We got a neighbor over there, and I've been trying to track it down. The grandsons got a license saying they were landowners. I mean, this is all hearsay. And I talked to the grandparents. The Game and Fish picked up their deer, fined them for wrong license, and now the state is fining them. I heard, this is all hearsay, $5,000. And we got dead deer laying all over. These people put it in their deep freeze, they were going to put it on the table, and that's what deer is made for, in my book.
Well, I think one of the things we have to look at is how we get to the source that can help you. We as a commission have no authority to change
Well,
what
okay,
can happen.
can't you guys go ahead and go up to that upper level and say things are not working? We've got all kinds of dead deer around.
You give me your phone number, and I will have your legislators get a hold of you.
The ones
I'll
from
reach
Bay
out
County.
to them.
I tried.
And your address, so I know where you live and what district you're in for sure.
You know, and I'm kind of in the same situation that Rachel's in. We had probably 30, 40 deer in our hay also, and I called Game Fish and Parks, and they came out, took a look at it, and it isn't even so much for me. It isn't even so much the feed that, or the hay or whatever that they eat. It's the mess that they make, and the fact then that sometimes the cattle don't want to eat it after they've been on top of it. But you know what? It doesn't happen every year. When you have a severe winter like we have this winter, then you've got those issues. And I mean, it's part of the life cycle of wildlife. It isn't only the deer, it's the pheasants too. I mean, you get these late April snowstorms or late storms, and it smothers those pheasants. And with all the potholes now full of water, and the rushes and bulrushes and stuff being flooded out, there's going to be, the pheasants are going to take a hit too in this whole thing.
They already did. We haven't got any pheasants left between the coyotes. Dude, I raised 300 hen pheasants last year. Turned them loose. There ain't any left. Coyotes ate them up.
And we had actually had called a state trapper, and he communicates with us on a regular basis and comes and traps coyotes. And so the Game Fish and Parks will work with people to a degree. They can't perform miracles and solve every situation with every animal out there, every piece of wildlife that the public owns or that the people own. And just an unfortunate kind of a winter that we went through that it's probably not going to happen for a winter or two, that you won't have that. Did you have that issue last winter? Were they starving last winter?
No, we got exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
So let's get ready for this next one when it happens.
Well,
So we can do something.
I too had deer, like you guys both did in the hay, and I called the Game and Fish, and believe Nick was out there the next day. They fed deer in a lot of places around in Brown County, so I know they're doing what they can. Roads are closed, it's very tough for them to get around, and I was pretty happy with how they tried to help out and do what they could to feed the deer. I've seen the big alfalfa bales come off the truck, so I know they did it. I know they did it in a handful of locations too.
Well, they gave me one bale, but they needed corn, they needed energy.
It's tough to
That's
just
what they
dump
needed, is
You
energy.
can't just dump a load of corn too, and then they can go, they gotta kind of be,
Well, I'll get a hold of your legislators and ask them to get in touch with you. And then you can communicate your concerns to them and see what they're able to do at the legislative
Because
level.
there's exceptions to everything. I don't care what it is. So then there's another question I got. North of Bath, my daughter lives there, so I take care of her place. And there's these people that moved in there and they planted these trees. And I see in the paper they had to get rid of so many of these evergreens. Do you guys know anything about it?
Yes.
They were
Okay,
taking right of
that was on these trees were on the west side of the road, on the east side of their house. So what would be the problem?
I'm guessing they didn't meet setbacks.
There's
They did
certain
it without
setbacks.
permission.
I understand, but the buildings are to the west, so it's a northwest wind, so the wind is gonna break, so that them trees ain't gonna be a problem. My book. There's exceptions to everything, and to me, that's the thing I see, because I understand. We need trees. So wouldn't that be an exception?
It would be, but there's a lot of factors you take into consideration. The township government, where they're at with it. what
I
setbacks are.
understand, but let's use common sense.
maybe they were planning on water lines or something like that too, some of these things. Trees need to be in the right place, so they can cause some big trouble too, up above the ground and below ground when they grow.
I'll get your
More stories.
legislators in touch with you. I'll send them your
Thank
way.
you. Appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda, discuss declaration of emergency.
Those are too old.
You got it?
Yeah, I used to carry them in my pocket. I know what it costs. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Scott.
Scott?
Couple of quick things. First of all, I just want to touch base on a few things. Our EOC and that stuff for the new building was a thumbs up. I think we need to, there's a few things we can maybe tweak yet, but having GIS and IT and us in the same building was absolutely the right move for this. Our EOC staff was, as far as I'm concerned, was outstanding. These folks put in 15, 16-hour days, some of them even longer. I had volunteers step up, so if you see some of these folks out and about, tell them thanks, because again, it ran pretty smooth. The 211 system, well worth our money that we spend on that, folks. They're taking a load of information in for us, putting it in nice forms, sending it back to us, which is saving us time and personnel and effort. So again, the money that we're putting into 211 for this is outstanding. I have heard more comments about our drone program and the money and the time and effort that we saved on that. That again, all in all, it's been running very good. So I would like to open it up to any questions first, if there's anything I can answer. I will tell you that the EOC is still on standby for this next winter storm that's coming in. Depending on what that all does, will be if we're open or not again. Right now the EOC is closed, but like I said, we're just kind of in a standby mode. So I would venture, and there's more to talk about it. We're backed up today. We're not going to get into a lot of it, but there's more to talk about another day about some other programs and stuff that Dave and I work on that need some attention and stuff like that. So, any questions for me? Kathy should have a declaration, or Sarah, whoever, just asking because of the spring, the heavy snow, the severe spring runoff, dating back to March 15th and ongoing through 2019, that we have committed all of our resources, townships, cities, and stuff like that, to combat and relieve disaster and emergencies throughout the county. And I'm asking for a resolution to declare Brown County a disaster so we can ask for state and federal assistance.
So we have met all the requirements that we've needed.
We have, I don't have all of the numbers in, but the numbers, those will be a little bit slow coming in as water goes off before we can see damage. But I have my task yesterday for Patty and I in my office to make calls to the townships and try to get that stuff. We've already touched base numerous times with the townships for road maps and got the declaration forms and stuff out there for them to fill out. Again, I'm not going to ask for any of these numbers. We felt with the snowstorm coming, it sounds like this next week is going to be included in the state's declaration, so that's only good news. So I'm guessing after the snowstorm we will reach back out to these folks.
Have you had fairly good response from the reaction from the townships?
Yes and no. You know, we have a few of them that are outstanding that give us too much information, and some of them, you know, you kind of got to pull teeth on. So, but I think
they want money, they want declaration, but they don't have the documentation.
Yes, and again, some of them bring in, you know, more than enough, and some of them it's like, you got to give me more. I think we've heard the other day, I think we heard from 43 or 44 townships for the roadmap issue, so, you know, that's pretty good. So yeah, we'll get there. We'll work through it. Like I said, it's just, this is the next step in the process, is to get this passed through you folks so we can get it sent to the governor's office and make that next step happen. So, so with that, like I said, I would entertain that we move forward with this resolution.
Need a motion.
Yeah, we need a motion to authorize chair to sign the resolution.
I would move it.
Second.
Moved by Flanker, second by Weiss. I see here it's a roll call vote.
Commissioner Fleiker?
Aye.
Commissioner Sutton?
Aye.
Commissioner Weiss?
Aye.
Commissioner Kipley?
Aye.
Commissioner Feldhaus?
Aye.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, as part of all the documentation you're gathering, is there a timeline of what the events that occurred that has to go with that, or do we have something of that nature? The reason I'm asking is we had a joint meeting last night with some of our city comrades, and some were very surprised at the fact that we knew Monday, Tuesday that some of this was coming down. Obviously, we didn't know how bad it was going to be, but we did have some indicators, and they said they had no idea. So I'm just kind of curious the timeline of what transpired and if that's written anywhere.
Let me back up a little bit.
And
I met with the city.
We don't have to point fingers. I just want to know
I met
how
with the
things
city
went.
a couple, you know, a week or so ago at their Monday meeting to talk about other stuff, and you know, obviously it came up. Well, from the very beginning, coming into spring, indicators for our forecast were there's no flooding at Westport, there's no flooding at Ordway, there's going to be major flooding at Columbia. Now, I knew in the back of my mind that this was not true, okay? And I told the Weather Service and the River Forecast Center that there's no way we're going to get through spring without some type of flooding across Brown County. Every report until last week when we hit the mark, or a week and a half ago, all forecasts continue to show no flooding at Westport, Ordway, Frederick, those areas. Now again, did we put in some preparedness stuff? Absolutely. I can only give out the information that comes into me. I can only tell you, here's what the forecast says. Just like tomorrow, the snow's going to start tomorrow. Right now we're forecasted for 10 inches. If we get 20, I can't change that. If we get 2, amen, but again, I can't change that. So we have to somewhat prepare at the information that's coming into us, okay? Commissioner Feldheim and I met numerous days, you know, downtown Westport, and met with folks and met with city leaders and stuff like that, you know, and again, based off of the information that I had at hand was being passed on. Now, no different than the city of Aberdeen or Prairie Wood or wherever, folks, this is what's coming. Take some precautions. There's a lot of people that didn't believe that. We had a lot of old-timers saying, it ain't going to be that bad. Seen this before. And then, oh shit happens. And I think the Prairie Wood Township is a good community. Yep, there's water coming. We've never got this bad before until it was running in the gate. You know, and then we had to scramble. Shouldn't say we, they had to scramble. You know, there's been a lot of things to try to keep the water at bay. Again, there's, we've heard about the Elm Lake Dam, the snow on the Elm Lake Dam. That wouldn't have mattered, folks. I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not a water expert, but there was just too much water coming from everywhere. That area, you got Elm Lake dumping, you got the Maple, you got Dry Run, you've got the other dam, Willow Dam. You got 4 major waterways pushing into the Elm River. And again, the forecast that we had at hand said you don't need to worry. Now, I knew better.
You have to add to that the Jim River backing up and the Foot Creek dumping in.
Yep.
You got to take all that in consideration because, it's all part of the equation, the whole entire thing. They were all getting water, every one of them. Richmond Lake is still taking a lot of water. I went out last night and drove. Holy criminy, when you get west of Richmond Lake, there's a lot of water coming into Richmond yet.
Yeah. We're taking water now from Marshall County through the Claremont area. We're losing roads up there.
I see you just closed 7.
Yeah. So, again, Commissioner Feldheim and I discussed about opening the EOC a day before we did, and it was decided that, we would hold off, and thank goodness we weren't in the basement yet, because that would have cost us probably at least another half a day to a day to get equipment set up. So,
Sure. Well, and my question sure doesn't question, I'm not trying to put doubt in how we did things, because I think considering the people we had, the equipment we had, the time and the knowledge that we had, we did things to a T. We couldn't have done it any better. I'm just thinking the process, maybe we look at in case, because there'll be another one, it'll come again.
Yep.
It's just where are those indicators and what can we take away from this to improve things next time. But kudos to you and your staff, and couldn't have done it better.
And thank you. And as soon as we get through this weekend and we know that we can wrap things down with the EOC, we always do this after, no matter if it's a small incident, if it's Dave's incident or my incident, we always go back and do a critiquing.
Sure.
The goods, the bads, the uglies, whatever, do we need to add this, add that, take away from this? So that's already in the plan to say, okay, what did we learn from this? What can we remember from this? What can we take away from this to make it better for next time? So that will happen. I guarantee it, because again, that is part of the process that my office needs to follow for the disaster declaration. And so,
Thank you.
So yeah, and again, there was, Patty and I started putting together a list for thank yous, and I'm running out of paper, folks, because it wasn't just my office or the sheriff's office or the city public works or Dirk. There was people behind the scenes that busted butts to do what we did so far. Now again, we're not out of the woods. We could have a whole different disaster come Friday. So with this storm. So
Continues to evolve.
we're prepared to make, like I said, to reopen and do what we need to do. We've been putting out that people need to stay vigilant, not take down protective measures, take a look at maybe they need to add some more protective measures, again, depending on the forecast, and yeah, we'll go from there, I guess. So, okay.
I attended a few of the meetings. I was at 3 or 4 of them, and I was impressed with the key players that were all involved. Fire and rescue, fire chiefs, everybody was on board. I think they did an excellent job. I think the mapping was a big plus for the GSI to know what roads were closed for evacuations, emergencies, that type of thing. A lot of people were involved.
There was and there was a lot of people getting paid for this. Some getting paid more than others because they were on overtime, and there was some people that were volunteering their time and taking off their normal jobs to help us. And I think that just goes to show you what a great community that our area is. That we never once put out a formal request to people to come and fill sandbags. The phone rang off the hook to the point of we finally put out a request that said, if you want to come and help fill sandbags, go here, but stop calling us, because there were so many people and so many organizations that wanted to help. You know, and again, I don't want, that's a good thing, but the people just stepped up. We didn't have to ask. They just stepped up and took care of, you know, helped people out. It's no different in Westport. You know, Westport put out the call to their folks and said, hey, we need some sandbags filled, and they need to do the post office and this. They went and did it. This is how it should work. So, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, given that, I have a request for you.
Yes.
If you would, please. Last night, we had a conversation with the city at the commission meeting, and we've got some of those folks here. As you full well know, the airport has a desire and need to evacuate some water, and there is an agreement in place with some very specific stipulations. And there was a proposal put forward by the airport manager, which I think deserves some consideration, brings up a couple questions. I, as one commissioner, working with GIS and so forth, because of the terms of the agreement itself, that essentially dictates that with notice, they are not able to activate, or if they are activating it, they need to shut off that pump if roads within the watershed are underwater, which sounds pretty self-explanatory. However, as far as a trigger and so forth, it was suggested that a possibility at the gauging station, which we know is upstream a bit because it's basically on North Roosevelt,
Correct.
With some time lapse and so forth. So within the realm of what's possible, I would like it if we can define which roads generally are affected if the MOG is overflowing.
Okay.
And then if we can identify elevations, how they relate to the flood level that's identified by the National Weather Service at the 6-foot level as flood level at that gauging station.
Okay.
So we have an idea of which elevations are which, because what the National Weather Service considers to be a flood level and what we may consider for this purpose. I'd like to see what the correlation is in elevations for that, if possible.
Let me scribble my thoughts
Yep,
here.
no problem.
After last Tuesday, the direction was given to me to verify roads underwater for this agreement. We went out and created this map that shows the city of Aberdeen, the MOG and its tributaries within X amount of miles, okay?
So you've got it.
That's this map, okay? The yellow is the tributaries and the MOG. The green is the route that we physically drove to look at county and township roads, okay? On April 2nd, this was the day of the commission meeting, again, that's when we were directed, we had 2 roads that were underwater with the hash marks, okay? The circles, and I understand it's a little hard to see, were roads that were up to the shoulder or almost going over, okay? I haven't rerun this because I already know what the answer is. It's a disaster down there. The problem that I see with that, Commissioner Weiss, is that the MOG was backed up from Foot Creek. There wasn't water coming from the north when this was taken, when these farmers' roads were underwater. It was from Foot Creek, not from Moccasin Creek. So where do you want to determine, are we going to put in this agreement that it's Foot Creek and Moccasin Creek, or Foot Creek and Moccasin Creek that can create these issues? Is it just Moccasin Creek? I don't know where to take that, because again, there's so many. So if it's water over the road, again, we can go out and determine half a dozen, you know,
I guess
put a stake in the ground and say.
Another question I've got is why is this gauge at the Pirates Cove so important? Why isn't the gauge down where we're talking about, where the Moccasin and the Foot Creek, and that's where the gauge ought to be read, not up here. Let's read the gauge where they want to dump water in, not behind.
Well, that may be the ultimate next step here is where would we gauge that at, and is it necessary for us to use a
To
different
me,
one
it's just
or
crazy
establish
to
one?
gauge above
in order for
where you're
that?
putting more water in.
Well,
Let's gauge-
that gauge is for the city of Aberdeen,
Right.
for water coming in from the north. We can add a gauge, it's only money.
It'd be down there.
Well, and
You
the
know?
proposal holds some validity, given, if, which is not a good if, you can guarantee that the water's only coming through that channel
Right.
as a contributor, which it's not.
Rob? Bob? You have something to share, Rob?
Exactly what you guys are talking about. The push was from Foot Creek. So last night, we developed, it's a history of the combined flows, okay? So you've got the history through the whole week. You got the history through the whole week, and the bottom line is what we try to do is estimate the flows. Foot Creek has very good data on what the flows are, so that second page shows kind of the numbers. At the 10 foot, which is where the peak ended up at, that's 1,160 CFS. That's a lot of water. And the foot, which is, and Moxon Creek, which is, it does not have stuff correlating to the actual stage, but I did some calculations off of what happens down at the box culvert Melgard. Okay, so that's the numbers you'll see below that second sheet on the Moxon Creek. That's the gauge up at Pirates Cobra up on Roosevelt with the actual elevation, and then a calculated number. It's just a number, okay? It's not going to be exact. I want to make sure everybody understands this was done at 8 o'clock last night. But that gives us kind of an idea of the combined flows, and exactly what Scott said, on the first and second, more than likely, there was really not much contribution from Moxon Creek at all. It was all backing in, and actually the rise in the water was just Moxon Creek backing in on us, okay? But then we started seeing more melting in town, so we probably started getting to a static situation, and then when things came in through Prairiewood toward the weekend, that's where we actually saw the push going the other way. And by that time, Foot Creek was going down. The thought process that I had was, first of all, probably the flood stage isn't the best marker, because you don't want to be right at brim full and then say, well, let's start pumping. That's probably unrealistic, because you're going to see some change in elevation. The last page shows what would happen if we use the action stage on each one of them. And for Foot Creek, the action stage is approximately 330 CFS. The action stage for Moxon Creek would be around 250 CFS. So your combined flow is about that 580. If you had a combined flow of 580, that should put us below the action stage for either one of them. The pumping rate that Rich was proposing yesterday for half a day, basically a 12-hour period at the 3450 GPM, that equates to a daily flow of 3.8 CFS, okay, to put it into perspective. So going back, did I include, I don't know if I've got that. Is there a second last sheet on there?
There's three sheets.
Okay, you've got that. Okay. That last sheet shows the history of what Foot Creek, so this last piece that's highlighted, that is Foot Creek. And so adding 4 CFS to the current flow. So your current flow is 390 CFS. You add 4 CFS to that, that puts you at 401. There is on 4.9, there was a 402 CFS. That's 8.29. That's 2/100ths of a foot higher than the current level. So the illustration is how does 4 CFS affect? So what the airport would, this is a question last night, so I thought it would be important to see how it correlates. What the airport is proposing to pump could affect Foot Creek at that level by 2/100ths, which equates to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, if you just break it into inches. If you look at the overall combined flow, you're probably talking less than 1/8 of an inch difference in flow. The little bit that they're planning on pumping is overwhelmed by how much, we can't pump enough to really overwhelm that system at this point. Just food for thought. I understand you guys, you're not going to make a decision. It's food for thought on how to approach it so you can come up with something objective. Dennis, I agree. It's harder to correlate when you've got 2 upstream gauges and the combined stuff that's happening downstream. Like Scott said, it's only money. What we were looking at was advanced notification, why they put the gauges where they did. That was to give some warning to where we were, what we were looking at down the road. It may be helpful to have another gauge put in downstream where we can see the combined seriousness of what happened.
Would make that agreement tweaking a lot easier to have a gauge that you could go by for this. I don't know what that costs.
Right.
Well, here's, the city and I, Robin's office and my office share our river gauges. The James River Water District pays for Stratford Columbia gauges on the James River. So we have the Elm, the Westport, Ordway, Moccasin Creek gauges, 4 of them, and our bill for those 4 gauges is over $20,000.
A year. So it's about 5,000 of
So it's about 5,000 or so, depending on what type of equipment we put in there. We put in flow monitors and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, to add a site plus the install, I'm guessing.
So does okay, run that again. Where does that 20,000 come from?
We split it. We split it down the middle.
And USGS covers the other half. Actually, that's half the bill. It's like a $40,000 bill.
Yeah.
And then we take our half, and then we split it between the 2 of us, our 2 departments.
If we were to add another gauging station down in this affected area, would they still cover half, or would that be a request you could make of them?
That would be a request we could make.
Okay.
I think they're always looking for partners, so I think they'd be willing to look at another gauge. It's more information they can gather.
Given the dynamics of that area, that would be a logical place to put one, so we'd have a better idea of how they're impacted in that part of the county.
And just in general, if you don't have control of a situation and it gets out of hand, it's an act of God. The problem with having a certain level of control is people expect you to exercise it. And there's different perspectives on it. The nature of the agreement, and it's open for renegotiation, it's clearly not going to happen here, and it's not going to happen quickly or easily, is obviously intended to protect public infrastructure, the roads that are affected by that particular water flow, regardless of which way it's coming or going or whichever. So having a more definitive way to identify when that infrastructure is not in peril, to the extent even limited as it is, that you may be able to impact it with what you have control over, is the question. And so I think at this point, now that we're actually testing it after the last event and coming to an agreement we do have, there's a need to better define when that infrastructure is or is not in peril.
Robin, last night, I can't remember the number of holding ponds you said Aberdeen had, but just a hypothetical question. If those, I think you said 20-some, if those holding ponds were allowed to remain half full in a situation that we're in right now with water everywhere, that would, to me, that would show that Aberdeen is doing everything they can to release as little water as possible. Keep your holding ponds half full, so you'd still have capacity for whatever the event coming up this week, could hold some more. But to me, that would show that you're doing everything you can to allow as little water as possible, and you're doing everything you can to pull back as much as possible until the creeks were more capable of accepting it. Would that be a reasonable request?
One of the things that I'll tell you is we still do have concerns. We have, let's say we end up with a 2-3 inch rain tomorrow. Last thing I want to do is go into that storm with half full, 3/4 full ponds, and then we end up flooding out because we held the water that should have been evacuated. Our objective is to get rid of that water when the creeks are down. So we pumped our stuff down a couple weeks ago before things were flowing hard.
Sure.
That's our objective. We certainly don't want to do it when the creek is running hard. But if we were to end up with a 2 inch rain, whatever, tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, we could hold for a while, depending on forecast. And I wouldn't have a problem doing that if things are really running hard, Foot Creek and Moccasin Creek. It doesn't make sense for us to add to it. But if I saw something in the forecast, I'm going to want to try to trickle some of that out.
Now, you said there were 27 holding ponds, and do all of them go to either the Mog or to Foot Creek?
Absolutely.
Every one of them?
Yeah.
Okay, how many of them actually are pumped, and how many of them are gravity fed, in other words, gated, where you actually pull the gate and let the water out versus pumping it out?
The holding ponds are really set up to take what you can't pump. My statement earlier, when you look at a full system, we can't pump enough to overwhelm a system, but what ends up happening, the pumping capacity is low relative to what you may need at a high flow situation, okay? So the holding pond is there as the buffer in between what may be coming in and what you can pump.
So you're saying the pump is above? I guess I'm not understanding.
The pump is only able to pump so much. Probably all but 2 or 3 of our holding ponds are pumped, just because of the nature of how flat we are. The ponds are below grade. Everything drains into those ponds. We can't do things at the surface, otherwise we'd have to have a meaningful pond. We'd either have to have it several acres in size, which wipes out blocks. You have to take homes out, or you have to do it below grade, and you make it smaller but deeper. Then we have to pump.
So they're all pumped then?
Just about all of them. There's a couple that are gravity, but those are unique situations where we're able to have a little more size to them, and you only have a 3-4 foot depth in them.
We can sure look at a gauge down south. I'm not sure if using roadways is the right answer, because again, there's so many waterways, you know.
Well, it's a continuing conversation, but the wording within the agreement as it stands is essentially the roadways are the trigger. That public infrastructure, we don't want to, with what we can control, can add to the potential peril of that infrastructure and people's ability to access them.
Understood.
So we still have to go maintain that thing that Rachel brought up, Commissioner Kipley brought up last week, and that's the emergency situations. And I mean, I know I kind of got zinged by the mayor last night about my comment about the agriculture and about the farming. So be it. But the fact of the matter is, there's a heck of a lot of water that came off Aberdeen that's went north or went southwest, and it's affected a heck of a lot of people down in that area. And it's just, you know, part of what it is.
But this particular agreement for this particular situation has got some specific stipulations in it.
One thing I will add, one of the purposes behind the holding ponds, then it's, you know, there's a perception of city just sends all the water south, okay? And I understand the perception. The idea behind the holding ponds is to limit the discharge. That's why we need the buffer. We only want to discharge what would have normally come off of that ground in an undeveloped state. That's the idea behind it. So we're trying to limit. It does generate, it just stretches the amount of time that it takes to flow down. But if you were to just put in a 60-inch pipe and just let her go, that's going to be a lot more water than what we can pump and use, you know, so we buffer it by several days by using the holding ponds.
And I have to concur, the amount of water that the airport wants to pump is not going to affect the roads any different than the status that they're in right now.
And it's too bad the agreement at the time it was negotiated and signed doesn't reflect that. It says roads flooded, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about it. Until you change it, which could have happened last night or it could happen at the next one.
Not without considerable public input.
But that's the point of a joint meeting, you notice it to the public. And all of that was,
Well, that was
in the agreement pretty clearly.
That was part of the negotiation. I mean, it would probably not have happened. That pipe probably would have not gone in had that not been put in that agreement.
We had to have something there to protect the people down south, because they showed up in full force when we were negotiating that agreement.
Well, this whole issue, this airport deal, nothing's flooding at the airport. And the water capacity, you guys have holding capacity after water. I feel like this is a goose issue that turns to a water issue now. All of a sudden, it was just in the meeting last night, there's 12 geese out there that are problems. Well, I guess when we just talked about the deer just a little bit ago, they came in. I guess I called the Game and Fish to see what we could do for options. And have we done that out there? I mean, eventually sometime you'll probably have to lower that water out there, I understand that, but this next storm's going to be something bigger than I think it's getting credit for up here in this room right now. And you just give it a couple weeks. I mean, if these geese are going to be there. There's geese all over around this area. There's everything possible. But if there's 12 out there, and if it's okay to use lethal force or whatever we got to do to get these 12 out of there, and the water can stay. You keep saying this isn't a water issue, it's a goose issue. It really sounds like a big water issue when we really sit and argue about all this thing. And if the roads are under, I feel the pump should be off, and we definitely have got to get a gauge south of there somewhere, somehow, to where it can be measured that way, not upstream, I guess. So.
Put our conservation officer on the spot here.
You know,
what are the chances of those geese, and Canadians are good at it, actually nesting out there? Do they actually have to be within a certain distance of a large pool of water before they'll actually nest? Or would it be a good idea to get them the heck out of there for the potential of they might nest there?
Yeah, this day, or at this time frame, it'd be best to try to haze them out of that area. I know the airport's done a lot of work out there with, some of the mitigation of, they had some sloughs out there, they filled them in, done some work out there, and I know it's helped over the last couple of years, but a year like this where everything starts melting at once, you get that sheet water and then those ponds. But yeah, this time of year would be the best to try to haze those things out of there before they establish nests.
So they actually nest somewhere else.
Correct, yep. And I know the airport, I've worked with them quite a bit, and talked to them a lot, try to get those things, they do a good job of trying to haze that stuff out of there, just so it doesn't get comfortable and set up there. I know in the past we have had problems with, ducks and geese out there and things like that, and we've tried to resolve those. But yeah, right now, before they actually start breeding and laying eggs, is the time to try to get those moved out of here and try to see if they can find another area to nest in, so more desirable area. So
Nick, can you get rid of the 12, or is that? I mean, they've already done so much to get it down to 12.
Yep, the airport does have a permit through Game Fish and Parks and Fish and Wildlife that if they need to, they can do a kill permit on species out there to help result, for public safety basically.
So if it's an issue for pilots, the 12 that are left could be.
They could be, yes.
Well, and as of this morning, we're not 12 left, so now we're dealing with ducks.
So the 12 are gone.
The 12 left, as I explained at last night's joint session, we did take 2 mating pairs. We had to legally take those because we weren't able to spook those off property. So they'd get up, they'd fly a little bit, get back down. So this morning, there were about a dozen and a half ducks on there, so we hazed those off. I guess my concern is that we're sitting on, I guess at this point, probably somewhere in about that 33 million gallon range of water, and with this storm, to your point, Jared, what happens when our pond gets filled? Then we've got a danger of water encroaching on the runways and taxiways.
I know my pond's full. No.
Mine is too.
I don't know, if you pump that, or is that gonna be pumped dry then?
No,
So
that's
there's
not
no,
what
well then that's within the duct, you're still gonna be there, and there's still a hole there. They don't care if it's 12 inches or 5 feet, they just feel like once this thing gets going, this is like a great big sump pump and a very juicy part of ground that is gonna run and run and run, and you're gonna think it takes, I mean, according to whatever levels you got there now, but I think there's water gonna keep coming in. I'm just scared it's gonna go and go and go, and this is just gonna be another losing battle for us in the end down there. It costs a lot of stuff to try to even just survive all this stuff down there. That's my frustration with it.
Well, I'd like to see that water off the airport as soon as reasonably possible, but considering where we've been and where we're at with it and so forth, and the standing of the agreement and so forth, we're going to have to work through this.
So it's safe to say it's a water issue at the airport, not a waterfowl issue now?
It's a water issue that's attracting waterfowl.
But the hazing's successful with
The
waterfowl?
hazing, we've been able to keep up with the hazing. The weekend, the Sunday before this past Sunday, there were about 5,000-6,000 geese on that pond.
And hopefully now with other bodies of water opening up, I mean, for a long time there, the amount of ice we had on our lakes and other bodies of water in the area, obviously nothing was opening up. You know, a lot of that ice was just floating as water flowed in, but at least now we broke up, so maybe, like I said, these waterfall will take to different areas. Yeah. Usually if you haze them, it seems like if there's other areas for them to go, at least they can start utilizing those areas. So, you know, like I said, a couple weeks ago, yeah, you can only do so much, and when there's open water, yeah, and just like a golf course or anything else, if that's the only spot that's open and everything else is froze up, they're going to come back in there. But luckily, we were getting things to open up, so.
Well, I think we have the agreement in place, and I would be definitely interested in making the request to see if we could get a gauging situation down where the two converge, so that would be the true test of what level that needs to be, and work on redoing this agreement so that we could have a public meeting and let people come in and voice their opinions and concerns, and maybe use that gauging station as the trigger, whether the pump is on or off, and renegotiate this, because like I said last night, this is the first true test we've had of this agreement, and now we find ourselves in this situation, and yeah, it could have been done differently and better, and we realize that now.
Yeah, so if that's going to be the measure, what is the measure and how are we going to measure it?
Right.
And maybe we don't need to spend $20,000 on a gauge. Maybe we can put up a static gauge or something that's a manual read type of thing that, you know, it's a one-time cost, and, you know, we set a datum and move forward.
Yep.
Robin and I can definitely work on that, and
so let's more
see what our best
clearly
options are
define
versus,
indoor
you know,
option.
Since it's a tributary to the James River, we know somebody on that board, is that something they put money towards or not so much?
Would absolutely be considered.
It's definitely worth the request. Get on their agenda.
Okay.
I think I know somebody on that board.
Thank you, Scott.
Well, the consensus is we move forward and try to work this agreement out to a better compromise for the airport, for the farmers down south. I agree with Dwayne, it's the first time it's tested, you know how it is when you take that first test, it's not good. So hopefully we can get this resolved. I don't know the time frame. You know, I know the airport would, you know, depend on this next storm. The next issue you'll have, instead of waterfall, you'll be overflowing with water, and that'll put more pressure on a decision to be made. So I think we need to, I don't know if there's a time frame or how long we're looking at trying to work this out. I don't know.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do with the water levels the way they are. We couldn't get in to probably put a static gauge in there. But then we would need to determine, okay, what's the level that we're going to use as the trigger? And there's just a lot of information we need to gather yet, I think, before we can finalize anything.
Well, the communications is good, so I think the dialogue is going to continue here. And the commission does recognize that the attractiveness of that in and of its own nature does attract wildlife, which has a potential to be a peril to traveling public, and I'm one of those people, and a lot of others that I know. So that point is not lost.
The way the agreement's written, if there's water on the roads, flooded, it doesn't matter if the runways are flooded or not. There's probably not a lot you can do about it unless the two groups, the two public bodies get together, notice it for public hearing, and make a change to the agreement. So it will take at least a week to do that.
Exactly.
And that was by design.
Assuming, yeah.
Well, so now we know what the agreement dictates in its current form.
We've already known that.
Yeah, but now that it's being tested.
Well, we're definitely interested in working with you because safety of everyone is our number one concern, and the peril of the landowners is another concern, so.
I agree. Thank you.
Scott, are you gonna kind of take care of the gauging thing, or work with Robin?
I'll work with Robin. I don't know that we'll get a lot done on it this week just because of the storm. So yeah, as soon as we can, we will, like I said, obviously we're gonna look at costs, and if we can do something a little cheaper first.
Morning. You guys are talking cordially, which I know full well, so carry on.
That's not an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Four car tire limit again.
We're limiting you on the tires. Sit down. Thank you, Mike. Yep.
Next up, we have Mike Scott, landfill manager, waive fees for the pre-spring residential cleanup.
That time. I guess it's pretty straightforward, just that time of year. Dates April 26th through May 11th. That's at the landfill, and then we got the two drop sites in town again on April 26th and 27th. One restriction on the tires, it's a 4-car pickup tire limit.
Per person, per vehicle.
Per trip? We're not keeping track.
I know a guy that wants to know.
He's a pickup per individual.
Right. Sounds good.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Kippley, to authorize the, waive the fees for the spring residential cleanup from April 26th and 27th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, that was easy.
No
Congrats on your
tractor,
compactor.
Yeah,
no tractor or scraper tires, huh?
No. You can pay for them.
What was the date going?
I'd give you a flyer.
Thank you.
Yep.
Everything else for us?
Everything else, it's spring, lots of trash.
Confull?
Actually, it's doing what it's supposed to, you know, we just put in that new stormwater pond. We've been pumping it solid now for 2 weeks. I don't know the exact number of gallons, but all that water would have been treated as wastewater if we wouldn't have had that pond in there. So that water was able to just go down into our wetland, and anything over the wetland is running into the creek, so.
So where are we at with the rural fire station dump site?
Mike and I are still working on that.
We're working on it right now.
It's still there.
The grass of the yard waste part of the site, and hopefully we can get this in the newspaper, because people are going around driving through the snow that's back there and trying to dump their grass, but that's closed. That part of that operation is closed, and it's been moved to the fairgrounds. We can't access the area where that material goes, and we've got a sign up, and like I said, people are just driving around it, going back into the mud, and
It's 2 miles in 10 minutes, and we have the capacity to be able to take it in a much more appropriate facility.
we've got all asphalt up there, and we just don't have the means set up down there to handle it anymore. So yard waste, or regular household trash is still there, but we're working on that too. Obviously this spring we've had a lot of, once it starts warming up, everybody just keeps bringing their trash and piling it on. So we've got two guys that keep that clean Mondays and Fridays. And hopefully we can keep our contractor dumping the containers. You know, most of those containers, I've gone back and looked at the video, even up at the fairgrounds, they'll dump that at 5 o'clock. And between 5 and 8 o'clock, those cans are full. Everybody comes back from where they're at, and it's just...
So how are things working out over at Groton?
Similar. Spring, you know, it's those cans get dumped. Those 8 cans get dumped once a day. So When they fill up more than that, then they're full. So,
is there physically room for maybe a couple more? Would that help or not?
it would help some,
transport it.
but I mean, if we could dump it more often, it would help more.
Sure.
But right now, they're having trouble hiring staff just to run their trucks.
So when do we re-up that contract? When is that contract up?
Coming up here next year.
Next year?
We'll probably even do it late this fall.
Okay.
So next year, April, I believe.
Okay.
So
about a year from now.
Yep.
You interested?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so. You got some ideas? You want a partnership or something?
Start. Anyway, it needs 2 trucks. It needs about 3 full-time staff and about 90 containers. So it's a big investment that's ongoing.
Can you put numbers together?
I will. Yep. We'll have some
Put a
numbers
proposal
put together. You know, we'd have to hire more
Just
staff.
out of curiosity.
And we'd have to have a bigger landfill budget.
Yep.
What is the current contract? Is it 200?
I think we're 250. I think it's 300, 250 to 3. It all depends on the miles they drive. And
wouldn't even buy one truck.
One truck. That's right. But over the years, you know, it's. But like I said, it takes the staff and it takes. I don't know how many hours they're running a day, but right now it's
legacy costs.
It's a lot. So. But it's possible that there would be some grant funds available for that also. If a person was looking at that type of thing. Always trying to look to keep the businesses taking care of that for us, but that's always an option if we see it's going to benefit us.
Well, if they're having a hard time hiring help, you know, we would too.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the last full-time equipment operator position we had what, 5 applications? So
you had a pretty good.
Yeah, you actually had some applicants.
We had a few.
It'd be nice if that was at least doubled or tripled, but yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that's on the list to get done here this year.
It's on the horizon, huh?
It's on the horizon. It's coming. So, but yeah, we did get a grant too for the compactor that we're buying. So that was about 139, 20% of what our purchase price. So
very good.
And those grant funds always help.
You bet they do. More money back.
All right. Anything else?
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Like some deer?
We've had 80 of them at the landfill. We've been feeding them all winter long.
I knew that. Surprise.
No.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda is an in-code financial regional training.
Basically, we have some new personnel, and it's been 3 years since we hosted the last in-code training. We're probably going to have 4 to 7 people that from here that would be attending this, and so just wondering what your thoughts are. We'd like to ask the chairman to sign if you're interested. Basically, we do get 2 free registrations and half price on the rest of them. If we host, it has to accommodate up to 25 people. We do, as you remember, well, a couple of you don't remember, but we are required to provide snacks and water and things for that event, but it's a 3-day event. They go through each piece of the in-code financials, payroll, you know, the general ledger, and it's good training. It worked out real well last time, and so if you're interested in moving forward on that again, I'd like the chair to sign and we're looking at July 23rd through 25th down in the community room.
Now, is Encode in charge of recruiting potential attendees?
They actually send out a notice to all the South Dakota agencies that have Encode.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and we just have to do some stuff on the administrative side once they're here. Got to take daily attendance and things like that, but yeah, they take the responsibility of recruiting people. Last time we ended up with closer to 30 each day versus 25. So.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Is there a certain number that we are having from our departments? What
Yeah.
departments are we?
We're looking at 4 to 7 between the auditors, HR, and IT.
What's registration cost?
It's, for us, it'd be 65, we get 2 free, and then 65 for the half
That's the
price.
half price.
150 for the other people.
I'll make a motion to approve it. I think it's a good deal.
Second.
Moved by Sutton, second by Weiss, to authorize chair to sign the regional training registration form for Encode. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sarah, do you have anything else that come up? Gary, do you have anything else come up? The only thing I have is I had a Herb Schoeneman call from up at Westport, and he wanted to make sure that the highway would be thanked for their promptness and their work that they did on the north end, which I think that they did the best job they could with what they had to deal with.
Corky.
Yeah.
But anything else to come before the commission?
I had one item. We had been working on that comp plan with Northeast Council of Government, and it's still kind of had a jump start, but we're at a standstill, and Vader seems a little bit overwhelmed with 3-mile stuff, regular duties, and things going on. So I had mentioned to Gary maybe he could jump in and help with that comp plan, if everybody'd be okay with that.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Well, you're somewhat familiar with the planning and zoning, so I would think it'd be a good fit to work and co-op to do together.
Appreciate it.
Anything else?
The fact that the horse races are canceled for this year, we probably should put a call into the Neuendorfs that, you know, I know it's really short notice and probably nothing will happen, but at least give them the heads up and the opportunity that they could schedule maybe something just to,
When
so
is
they're
that
aware.
contract up? When is the race car race contract up?
I'd have to look, I don't know. I thought we just renewed.
Yeah, it's at least another year or more.
Does the county set the number of races, or do they offer the number of races, or how does that work?
Every January, they're supposed to be submitting a schedule to us of what they're...
Because I had somebody this week ask me, how come they don't have a race or two more into the fall? And I couldn't answer it. I
I
have
think
no...
they cut it off after the fair, right? Or
Yeah,
close to that, so they don't have to redo some...
I had talked to Todd on this, and the reason is they tear it down for the Brown County Fair, and by the time the fair gets their stuff out 2 weeks later, by that time school started, they have time with competing with football on Friday nights. All their workers are normally high school, college kids are all back in school. They have a hard time keeping her there. There's a lot of circumstances that affect that, and a lot of it's the fair, the tear down of the fair. And I think Todd says it takes them a week to set up once it's all tore down to go back into racing, and then with all the other things, it just is hard to...
I will relay that information. That's perfect.
The other question I have is now that the horse races are down at the point where they're not going to be running more, what happens with their contract?
Can't answer that. I'd have to look at the contract to see.
Yeah, maybe dig that up.
Okay.
So,
Is there an option for somebody else to buy that contract, or does it have to be rebid to finish out the term of it? I mean, if there's a year left, or...
I don't think there's anyone that would be interested.
It'd be a different...
If this group can't make it.
but I think Dwayne's idea, offering it to Neuendorf or to, you know, to have a race or two earlier.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Somebody, they had offered to buy that.
We expand the dates that are available. It's
Right.
an amendment.
Right.
So I guess that was the next thing. That's why we probably should know what's going to happen with the horse contract at this point.
So are they racing in Fort Pierce?
No.
Oh, none at all?
They were going to be maybe one, we were going to be the one, but funding just didn't materialize.
I'll give them a call, see if they're interested,
Yeah.
and we'll go from there.
Okay.
They said it's late notice, but they might be able to throw something together.
Yeah.
Well, they may be able to set up a little earlier than they do in past years, just to get their stuff, their format, their track ready and stuff. It might help them out that way.
Well, a number of tracks, they won't hold a specific event, but they'll just have an open day where you can come out and test and tune and, you know, so you don't have a necessarily specific competition, but it gives the racers an opportunity to come out and test their equipment and try things. in a safe and organized environment, so
Well,
they
they
have
have
some
available.
interest in doing that, and maybe throwing a race together if they can and want to.
Sure. That's all I have.
Anything else coming before the commission?
I will not be here at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Neither will I.
Additional comment on the drainage problems. When the beef plant was being developed, they were going to handle their water waste at the plant in liquid manure, and they built a large holding pond about 2 miles southeast of that plant. The first owners of that never got going with it, of course, and the present ones are not using that holding pond. And I'm not sure what the dimensions are, but I think it was either 80 acres or a full quarter. That might be also another possibility to run the pipe from the sewer plant out here where the airport's pipe is, run that pipe another 2 miles south and dump into that holding pond. I don't know who you would have to work with on it. I don't know who owns it, that type of thing. But then how do you get the water out of there? The initial beef plant was looking at selling that water to local farmers for irrigation. That would be a way of getting it out of there. Or
It would be interesting to know if there's water in that holding pond now.
probably whatever snow blew in there and that type of thing.
Or we backfill somehow from off of the Mog or...
No, this sits up way too high for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not aware of...
The Mog is within 500 feet of it. So I'm not suggesting you pump it out of the Mog, but maybe you get it there before it gets into the Mog. I'm a little bit leery on what some of the city is saying on these holding ponds. Yes, they have 27. I was told last night those are almost all of them are on automatic or on float control. When the float has
Well,
gone
he
for a little
couldn't
bit of
allude to
water,
that.
it's pumping. I know that the one out by the fire station on the bypass road, west of the auto plaza and so forth, there was more water in there 3 weeks ago than what there was last Friday. Last Friday, I would say that was bone dry. So, I don't, I'm saying I'm not quite buying everything that are telling me.
Well, my concern there, not to be, maybe a little bit on a suspicious type, but who's going to monitor them or who's going to know what's pumping and what isn't pumping? I mean, how do you monitor that? That's another thing. I mean,
well, at this point, they're designed to try and maintain a specific level.
Yeah, but
automatically,
but
unless there's a
if
failure.
they're going to shut them down and regulate them and hold more water, who's going to be responsible for that?
Well, that opens up a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to give that responsibility to Scott?
Which is the Corps of Engineers.
Yeah.
I would move adjournment.
Second.
Moved by Kipley, second by Weiss to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Bring up